Hello and welcome to Personable, a podcast focused on speaking to the world's best, enabling you to become the best you can be. My name is HarveyBracken-Smith, and today I'm honoured to be joined by James Frost. As the loyal listeners of Personable know, James has actually been on the podcast before, just over a year ago, and so it's been pretty incredible to follow his journey up to this point. And I think he's one of the first, if not the first, guest of Personable to actually have a second episode. So James is a creative strategist and director, having previously worked with leading magazines, brands and artists in the UK, including Complex, Hypebeast, Wonderland and Clash. He's the founder of Buzz, which relaunched in July 2025, centralising the best events across fashion, music, art in London. He received over 30,000 downloads in just 50 days, with more than 2.6 million impressions across social media. Independently, he's managed to generate 4 million views across TikTok over the past 18 months and more than 1 million impressions on Instagram in the same time period for his own following. He's generated a personal following of more than 18.8 thousand followers on Instagram and 36.1 thousand on TikTok. When I first spoke to James last time, he was building a different company, but his willingness to keep pivoting and doing amazing things has been an incredible journey to watch. The first time we spoke, he was very focused on fashion, sneaking into fashion shows, taking photos, and he kind of had this concept for Buzz, in which he kind of had this, this app for nightlife. And so what he did is he stuck a sticker on a lighter and he'd give it to famous people, including Fred again, there it is, and get a photo. And I just thought this guerrilla marketing was the most incredible thing ever. But the product wasn't where it needed to be. And even if it was, it didn't have the user base. Fast forward about 50 days ago, I'm going on my LinkedIn and I see a post from James, and we're friends and we've stayed in contact since. And I see it and he's like, yeah, I've just, Buzz is now the 18th on the Lifestyle Global App Store. I'm like, holy, what the, that is just an obscenely incredible amount, kind of going from zero to nothing. And he only launched it 2 months ago. And so I didn't think that it wasn't just a please come on, it was an obligation for James to come back on. So James, thank you so much for coming. I wanted to get started by asking what Buzz is and why did you decide to relaunch it?
Yeah, I mean, what an intro. Thank you so much. So essentially, for those that don't know about Buzz, Buzz is a platform that centralizes all the best events across fashion, music, and art, right? And the reason I created this platform is because over the last few years, I've been working within the creative industry across fashion, music, and a few different areas, right? Trying my hand at a lot of different things. And I realized that there's a massive disconnect between the brand side and the consumer side. So in terms of the consumer side, I'm 23 years old. And I've noticed in London especially, less people are going out and drinking aimlessly, right? They're not going to the club as much. They're not going to the pub as much. The cost of living is high, right? And people are also more conscious about their health, right? Those are two massive factors external to what I've seen. And then also internally, people are wanting to connect with communities more, right? So whether that's their favorite artists or their favorite brands, or they want to go to an art exhibition that they've seen on TikTok and they don't know how to access that, right? That's one side of it. And then the other side is the brands and communities, they are trying to host more in-person activations, right? So they want to connect with their potential clients and customers in person to create those real moments, right? And not only those moments kind of establish a better relationship between that brand and the customer, it allows them to create content as well, right? And the content economy, as you know, Harvey, has grown massively over the last 5 years. So events aren't only an opportunity for people to connect with other people there, but also a content opportunity. So Buzz is essentially the bridge between those two areas, right? Between the consumers who are sick of boring clubs, they're more conscious of their health and they're less obsessed with drinking, right? And then also the brands who want to connect with those people directly.
But what changed, right? So you had this idea a year or so ago, and you were building it before. You had this kind of like theory of what Buzz could be, but now fast track to June, July this year. You hit it with a buzz, right? You get over 3 million impressions, you get more than 36,000 users on the app itself. Why did you decide to relaunch it, and how did you go about coming up with this incredible strategy that converted so many people?
Yeah, so the first version obviously we launched in October 2022, and that was whilst we were at uni and we were working with student developers, right? So that obviously has a few issues attached to it where we're all learning at the same time. None of us had built an app before, right? None of us had even got it listed on the App Store. That was a whole thing in itself. And we did the absolute best that we could with our resources, right? We didn't have any budget. We were just kind of like meeting up at Imperial College in London, every week and building this app and putting it together very like kind of as and when we could, right? Fast forward to now, I'm working with a developer who has built a lot of the apps. He's amazing. It's a guy called John. Shout out to John. And he basically helped me build the most polished version of Buzz that I could imagine, right? So the app now functions completely. There's no bugs. It's amazing. And it's an app that I genuinely would have used maybe 2 years ago when I was looking for this kind of thing. And I think that's why, one, it's resonated with so many people. And then in terms of the marketing, I've now taken a very different approach, which is I knew that UGC on TikTok, which is user generated content for those that don't know, is so powerful, right? Like one TikTok can get 500,000 views and just catapult you to the top of the App Store charts, right? Like that's how quickly things move now. And I knew, okay, either I'm going to hire people to create content for Buzz, or I'm just going to do it myself. And I thought, okay, I might as well do it myself, save the money, and also save the time and just get it done how I want to do it. So basically on TikTok, I've started posting content that essentially the format is I'll post a video about an event or about a few different events that are happening in London, because we're only London based right now. And then at the end, before even mentioning Buzz or even mentioning that I'm the founder of Buzz, I will then basically say, listen, if you're interested in these sort of events, you might also be interested in Buzz. So I think it's that value that you're offering for free at the front, right? And then you're plugging your own project at the back. And I think that's what a lot of people respect, and they kind of feel like they've discovered something without you just directly promoting it to their faces.
There's a few things to dissect there. The first thing I wanted to ask was, it actually links to something before where your initial idea for another company that you wanted to build was basically about being able to connect people that want to build an idea to people that want to create the idea for you. And as you mentioned, when you tried to build Buzz the first time, there were some bugs and you tried to get student developers to build it. In terms of, as a non-technical founder, how did you actually go about getting John? How do you incentivize him? Did you pay him? Do you give him equity? And how could other people do the same?
Yeah, so in this case, I paid John a fee up front, right? And it actually worked out a really nice time because I was looking for a developer for Buzz and John wanted to expand his portfolio. He believed in my vision. He knew that we would work well together, and it's actually a dream team, right? Like he is someone that can code, but he also understands the design language and sort of what people want to look at in an app, right? It's not just the, okay, back-end code, all that software. He's really good at both. And he also uses AI a lot, right? Whether that's fixing his bugs or testing, right? Like that's something that's developed in the last year where it's like code tools, AI code tools that have helped him accelerate whatever he was doing. And like if we had these when we had launched the first version of Buzz, maybe it would have been a different story, right? But the way it happens, right, the way that AI has grown in the last few years has allowed coders to basically do stuff a lot quicker and a lot more polished. Where before it was me and Amai sat down testing, Amai was my co-founder, and now it's kind of like an AI testing it, right? And I just have to click around a bit and not worry too much about it because I know the AI is good. So yeah, I paid John, and yeah, we have our own setup now, which I'm not going to disclose, but yeah, that's pretty much how it's working.
No, it was a lesser point of how much you physically paid and more about a setup question, because I think that's a common thing that people don't understand. Leading to something else, Gary V, who was particularly big on social media, let's say from 2 years ago to the 10 years prior, he's even now is still such a massive figure, but he almost had the level of fame that, say, an Alex Hormozi would today, in that on every social media platform that you'd go on, you'd see him everywhere, right? Sort of that everywhere level of marketing. And a piece of advice that he would have, I think he, had his own traditional business, and then he made like a wine selling business and used social media to make that big, and then develop that into VaynerMedia, is the big focus on that you're young, even up to the age of maybe 35. You don't have responsibilities truly until you have kids, right? So he was saying that you could basically do whatever you want and you're not failing, right? You're just learning.
Absolutely.
But the only thing missing in that is that we need money for food, for water, for housing, for transport, etc., right? You're only 23 years old, I'm 21, so you're 2 years older than me. There are also these external pressures of going to a great university and lots of other people having really prestigious jobs at top investment banks and consultancies. And I know you dipped your toe in VC as well for a little bit. How has that all formed in your mind? How have you funded yourself over the past year and a half? 2 years, what sort of things have you been doing? Was there ever a point at which you were like, entrepreneurship isn't for me, I want to go into a more traditional career? Could you sort of sum up that frame of thinking in your mind over the past 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so I basically told myself, listen, like there's two options when you're funding a business, right? It's either you go out and get external investors or you fund it yourself. And I wanted to go down the path of funding everything myself because that means there's less people to kind of keep happy, right? You don't have to keep your investors happy. You don't have to do what they want. I can just put out whatever content I want. I can put out whatever updates I want. I don't have to worry about that, right? So I decided to go down that path and kind of not take on any investors. And that basically means that I have two main focuses, right? One is buzz, which is actually quite low maintenance, which surprises a lot of people. It just means, so all I have to do is find the events, put them up, and then market the app, right? That's pretty much everything. And then obviously look after the development side as well. And then my other side is the freelance stuff that I do. So I work with brands and artists, sort of as a consultant or as a photographer, and I'll do that as well. And that helps me fund my Buzz project. And I also love doing that, right? So I've worked, for example, this year, I produced two photo diaries with Clash for Paris Fashion Week. I do it every year, like as we spoke last year, and it's just amazing in terms of meeting new people, going to new events, and experiencing sort of the culture around fashion. And then also I have sort of contract clients. So for example, recently I took on a client in Clapham. It's a new members club called the Arding Rooms, and I'm helping them with their growth strategy and their social media strategy. So that sort of project allows me to fund Buzz, and also I'm helping them, right? And then everyone's winning. So I'm helping them grow, they're helping me fund Buzz, and it's just, yeah, it's a happy circle.
But how does something like the creative industry, how do you go about becoming a photographer? How do you get your name out there? What does networking look like in that space? And how do you go about charging high enough prices versus just doing stuff for free to actually go about funding your life and your career?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot. I also do a mentorship, right? So actually, I think after we spoke, I started a mentorship program, which basically I posted one video on TikTok, right, saying, listen, I'm looking to mentor one person, like one singular person. I want to help them break into the industry. It then got like 30,000 views. My DMs were absolutely flooded. And I thought, you know what? Okay, instead of choosing one person, I'm going to do cohorts, right? So I'm going to choose 50 people and get on 2 Zoom calls with them, give them loads of resources that I've put together, and also create a community on the back end where they can all connect and work with each other, right? So that's something that I started last year. I've now done 27 cohorts, right? I've just finished cohort 27. I hosted an in-person event, my first ever in-person event last Tuesday, where me and my friend were like speaking on stage. Thank you. And like, it was just a chance for people to kind of meet in person and network, and it was amazing, right? And in that mentorship, I basically speak about, obviously I get that question a lot, like how do you start charging the right prices, and how do you kind of network? And the way I always say it is that you have to start by building your own projects, right? So you have to realize that no one's going to come out and give you an opportunity to shoot a big campaign if you've got nothing to show for yourself first. So you need to find people that are on the same level as you, right? So if, for example, if you're a photographer, right, you need to find people that want to become models. You need to find people that want to become stylists. You want to find people who want to become lighting assistants, right? And put these people together and create this win-win situation where you're all working towards one project, and that one project allows you and all those other people to put that on your portfolio, and you repeat that process a few times until you've got a portfolio that you're happy with, right? Once you've got a portfolio that you're happy with, you need to target small clients, right? And by small clients, I mean the brands or the artists that haven't got that momentum yet, but you see potential in them. Then you offer your services for free, right? That's the start. And this is obviously this long process. Not many people like to tell the truth here, right? You have a lot of people just say, oh, you can just start charging prices straight away. You can't, right? Everyone in the creative industry does free work. So what I would suggest is you take your portfolio, you bring it to these smaller clients, you get a few of them on board, right? And then once you've worked with them, you kind of move up to the middle level clients. And then once you work with more middle level clients, the experience that you have, the portfolio that you have, and the connections that you have, they all kind of snowball together, and you start, the networks start clicking, right? Everything starts clicking, and someone will be like, oh, I'm working on this project, like, can you come along to do this? And like, that's just about putting yourself out there and having the work to support what you do, right? So you need to have stuff to show that you can actually provide value for these clients. And then it's just all about like building up and up and up. Like you can just email the CEO of Nike and ask them to shoot a campaign, but they're never going to reply, right? Like you need to just work your way up until you're in a position where the CEO of Nike might actually see your stuff on social media, right? Like that's the logic. And yeah, like I think that's the most important thing to do when you're starting out in the creative industry. Also, in terms of charging, I always get this question, which is how do you price yourself? And I always say, you need your baseline price, right? So you need to think, okay, for an hour-long shoot, this is how much I would usually charge. And then if a client approaches you and there's a job that you really want to do, right? Like it's the best job that you can possibly imagine, you really don't want to lose it out, you charge less than your baseline, right? So that the value that you kind of lose in terms of money, you're actually gaining in terms of experience and for your portfolio, right? If you get a job that you don't really want to do, right? Like you're not really interested in it, it doesn't really align with your portfolio, then charge more, right? Because then the value you're getting in terms of monetary is higher, but the value for your portfolio is lower. And that baseline strategy allows you to kind of judge what job should I do, how should I price myself.
Can you go into a little more detail on the cohorts? Like how long are these cohorts lasting? Are you able to tell people like how much you would charge per person? You don't have to. Don't have to answer that if you don't want to. And just a little bit like the amount of time you're spending on these things, because you've had the experience of being in the creative industry, working at fashion events, being a photographer, posting on social media. But it's interesting how that goes from doing that as your own person to doing that for a lot of people.
Yeah, so I mean, it started out last September, right? And the way I did it was I thought, okay, if it's going to be a cohort, I need to keep the cohorts quite small, right? So it goes from 50 to kind of 90 people, and I do it kind of monthly. And it's broken down into 2 live calls. The first call is focused on finding inspiration, building up your portfolio, and that sort of thing. So I kind of go through what I just said to you, and I show examples of building decks that I've done, right? So decks are, for those that don't know, they're basically super important in the creative industry, and not many people know about it who are coming into the creative industry, but they're a combination of visuals and also written like words that allows you to take an idea from your head and put it into something physical, right? Because it's very easy to think, okay, if I write a paragraph about my idea and send it to, let's use Nike as another example, they'll immediately see what I'm seeing, but that's not the case, right? You need to create something physical that they can then look at and think, okay, brilliant, like this is a deck of their idea of the campaign that they want to do, and then we can either move forward with it or not. So we speak about decks, we speak about building up your portfolio, like building a website, that's super important. And then the second call, which is a week later, right, at the same time, so we do it sometimes Sunday evening and then the next Sunday evening, that's all about outreach, right? So that is a part of the creative industry that not many people talk about, right? And then people will come up to me and be like, oh, I've sent 20 emails this week and I've got no replies. And then I'll be like, I sent 100 emails today. You need to up those numbers, right? Like in the Wolf of Wall Street, where it's like, those are rookie numbers. You just need to realize that, yeah, like there's so many people competing at the moment for the creative industry, like space. And like, it's such a hot space right now that you just need to treat it almost like a full-time job and kind of realize, okay, if I'm not sending emails, someone like James will be, and like I'm competing with that person. So that's what we cover on the second call, and we cover sort of the different types of outreach. And Alex Hormozy talks about sort of finding leads, and this has always stuck with me, right? The 4 main ways to find clients or leads. 1, cold outreach, right? So that's reaching out to people that you don't know, sort of through DMs, emails, LinkedIn, like I'm sure as you do to find your podcast guests, right? The second one is warm outreach. So offering your service or product to people that you know, or asking if they know people that might be interested. Those are the 2 first ones, warm and cold outreach. The next one is content, right? So it's free to post content on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram. You can literally post as many times a day as you want. And every single video you post is a lottery ticket, right? This video came out on TikTok, it went viral, but it stuck with me as well. Every video you post on TikTok or Instagram Reels or whatever is literally a lottery ticket if you're promoting something that you do or something you care about. Because if you get loads of impressions, you could literally change your life overnight, right? It's actually insane. I can't encourage people enough to post their content. And then the final method is paid advertising, right? So that is creating content or static media or campaigns that you then pay to boost on these platforms. So on Instagram Reels or on Facebook ads or on YouTube or on TikTok or any platform, right? So those are the 4 main ways. And I always say you need to be focusing your attention on at least one of them per day if you're trying to do outreach.
But is there not like at all any pressures? You have found a lot of success with this, with your cohorts and what you're doing with Buzz. But just before you launched Buzz, or even just before you launched your cohorts, or even during it, was there never any pressure that, hey, I might need to get a more traditional job from friends, parents, family members, or anyone else? Or have you always just been committed to pursuing your passions and you're going to find a way to monetize it no matter what?
Like I've always had that belief that I know that if everything, like if I don't, if nothing succeeds, right, I can go back and do a normal job, right? Like, I know that I can do that. So I'm in a very privileged position in that I know that for a fact. I know that I could go out and get a job. So whilst I'm young, whilst I still have this freedom, whilst I'm living in one of the greatest cities in the world, in London, it's really important to just go for it, right? Like my parents encourage me to do what I like truly want to do. I'm sure if it wasn't successful, maybe that conversation would change. However, for now, I'm getting enough momentum to kind of validate what I'm doing, right? So I think it's just about being patient and believing in that long-term vision. And I'm not sure if you spoke about this last year, but I'm a really strong believer in sort of reverse engineering goals, right? Setting a goal across loads of different things, whether that's health or business or like finance, like whatever those goals may be, and writing those down, then sort of building out a plan and working backwards and reverse engineering that final vision so that if you put in that work and those steps and you hit each step, you're pretty likely to hit those goals, right? Like it's about working hard enough where it becomes almost inevitable that you are successful in some capacity. Like even if it's slightly less than you wanted, you're still making more progress than everyone else because you're still making those decisions every day to work towards that final goal.
Yeah, I've kind of found that with myself and my podcast as well, because as you would
Mm,
know, with getting a user on an app, actually getting a follower on an account like Instagram or TikTok versus getting a podcast, listener or
yeah,
a user on your app that actually uses the app, it's a pretty hard thing to do. And so the obvious goal for me towards the end of this year, as I've started to ramp up my content, would have been 1,000 subscribers because that's I'm at 833 right now, and that's like actually my goal. Like I want to hit, it's a big goal on YouTube to get to 1,000 subscribers because then you can start to monetize directly off YouTube. It takes
mm,
you from 3 digits to four, etc. But
mm.
I was like, no, screw that. I'm gonna say my goal is 10,000. And already, like last week, I gained like 40 subscribers. The week before that,
There
like
you go.
30. Week before that, 20. And so you kind of get this cumulative returns in which people think, oh, the vision is not 150 more subscribers. The vision is 9,000. And I'd rather be a small piece in this big pot of, I want to be one of the starting people on this journey instead of a
Absolutely.
random number down the line.
Yeah.
So on that basis, right? So you've already been doing social media for a couple of years. We've spoken about this in the past, and you've had profound impact in organizing events, developing, and generating buzz around the events that you've done and around your social media content. But you come in, right? You find this developer who's able to build an end-to-end solution, bug-free, make it look a lot better with AI. All right, you have the app, okay? What is going through your mind in about launch? I know you've touched on a little bit about what the specific content entails, but what if you could work with the listeners right now, take us back from what the end goal is and how you're reverse engineering it. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
what were you doing in the lead up to Buzz in July? How did it reach such a high height in the App Store? How are you actually getting physical users on the site and not just impressions on a TikTok? And how does this, go forward now in September, October, November, December, and beyond?
Yeah, so my initial goal was 10,000 users within like 30 days, right? And we hit that pretty comfortably. And the main thing for me was so in June and July, obviously it was Paris Fashion Week. And obviously also this is another thing, right? This is another amazing part of doing the mentorship. Those 27 cohorts, right? They are all made up of people, mostly in England, right? But some of them in Australia, in like South America. There's so many different people, but a lot of them are in London or around London, wanting to go to these sort of events, right? So that was a great launch pad for Buzz, right? So that's essentially, as Brian Chesky, who's the founder of Airbnb, says, you need to find 100 people who absolutely love your product, right? They use your product every day. They're going to speak to all their friends about it, and it really solves a pain point for them. And basically, the mentorship allowed me to find like 1,000 of those people. So that was a great launch pad, right? So that's first of all, and that's been going on for the last year. And that was always in the back of my mind as well, thinking, okay, if I get this like 25 cohorts, I'm going to have a really strong starting user base. So in like May, June, I opened up a waiting list for Buzz, right? So essentially, I use this platform called Tally. It's actually like it's amazing. If you haven't heard of Tally, guys, go and check it out. It's basically like Typeform, but it's completely free. It's completely customizable, and you basically can open up waiting lists or application forms or anything like that. So I made Buzz sort of an application process and basically added that little bit of friction where people had to put their details in, put what they were interested in. And that waiting list got to about 2,000 people, right, before we'd even launched, right? So that was like a month before we were ready. And then I also opened up a separate waiting list for Paris Fashion Week because I knew Paris Fashion Week was in end of June, right? And I go every year. I know there's loads of events during Fashion Week and also during La Fête de la Musique, which is this like essentially like Notting Hill Carnival, but for Paris, where everyone's out, all these brands are activating, and it's a hotspot for the sort of people that Buzz is like made for. Paris Fashion Week is a hotbed for people from London within the industry that are going to all these different events. And I knew that if I could grab the attention of a few of those people who are kind of already really involved in the industry, then that would translate back to London when we launch in London. So what we did, actually, we launched in Paris for Fashion Week before we launched in London. And that allowed me with the 2,000 waiting list and also like the 1,500 waiting list in Paris, that allowed me to get a really strong initial user base, right? Once we launched officially and we opened sort of early access up, we did all that, we got the early people on the app, then we public accessed it. And that was when I started posting about it on my Instagram and sort of announced that Buzz was back, right? That's the next step, and that's called sort of like the public release. And then after that, it was all TikTok strategy. Like everything from that point, I was like, okay, TikTok is one of the greatest platforms I think ever created in terms of marketing. And as I said, it's a lottery ticket every time you post. And I started producing content, which we spoke about briefly before the call, but essentially content where you're offering value first, right? So you're hooking people in with value. And as you know, like the first 3 seconds of any video that you see on social media is so crucial, right? There's 3 sort of hooks that you can do. There's a visual hook, which is like something that looks interesting. There's a text hook, which is sort of the title of what your video is about. And then there's the audio hook, so what you're actually talking about. And I've been sort of playing around with those different things and making sure that I'm hooking those people in within the first 3 seconds so that they're more likely to watch the whole video. And at the end of the video, if I'm offering value, I would then plug Buzz at the end of it, being like, okay, if you're interested in anything that I've just been talking about, if you're interested in finding out more, Buzz is on the App Store now, you can go and check it out. And I think that sort of value first offer followed by, okay, this is further value that you might be interested in, that works really well. And I've probably like made 150, 200 videos of me just talking, like walking around on the street with little pop-ups on the screen. And those videos have done really, really, really well. And it's really easy to capitalize on cultural moments. So for example, if Nike are hosting a pop-up in London, right? I can then make a video a few minutes after it's been announced and capitalize on that trend and list the event on the app, right? So people can RSVP directly through the app. And then people they flood to the app, right? Like it's literally the highest conversion. It's crazy from video to app downloads. Like it's probably like 1 or 2%, which is like insane. So if I get 100,000 views, I'm likely to get 1,000 downloads in the day. So that's sort of how it works. And yeah, like I've basically just been repeating that method over and over again. And the plan eventually is to get other people to do the same, right? To teach other people how to make the sort of content that I've been doing and get them to target different demographics that I might be missing out on, right? So maybe get a female lead, right? Or someone who's involved with different communities than I am, and get someone who's already got those communities. And it's just about cross-pollinating, as you know, right? Like the best way to get users or clients or listeners is to kind of target existing communities that are similar to what you're doing. And yeah, that's the long-term plan.
So I want to go back into the branding side later on, but I think I'd be doing my listeners a disservice not to focus fully on the social media element. Can you go into even more detail? So you mentioned the visual, audio, and text-based hooks. You've also mentioned plugging Buzz at the end. But can you take me through like the actual planning board from the idea of something Nike are coming up with or putting out to actually making a whole TikTok? Can we talk through that in detail now on the podcast?
Yeah, of course. So let's use a case study, right? So let's say an artist like Skepta, for example, he might be hosting a listening party for his upcoming album, right? They host that in order to get social media content and in order to boost their launch, right? So those events, that's why they're hosting them. And they're often curated in a way that they have their own guest list, right? So he'll invite all his celebrity friends, he'll invite his industry friends, but then they usually open up a list of public RSVPs, right? And that is something that not many people know about. They assume that you have to be involved in the industry already, right? So these public RSVPs I know about because of my network, because of my connections, and I can then go really quickly from the moment that I see that being posted on social media, right? So I see, okay, Skepta's hosting this on Friday, it's currently Wednesday. I see that link, I upload it to the Buzz app, right? I get that all sorted out. And I make it really easy for them to access that RSVP link. I have all the details, the location, the images, everything, right? So that's all in one place. I can then literally just take a step outside and make a video about the event, right, with all the details and go, okay, on Friday, if you're in London on Friday, this event is happening. Skepta's hosting this party. It's going to be amazing, right? And at the end of it, I'll go, if you're interested in this event, as well as loads of events across fashion, music, and art, you can access them all on my app, Buzz, right? And you can find us here on the App Store. And that format just allows people to get value and instantly know, okay, so I want to access this Skepta account, this Skepta event. I'm going to download the app now and get ahead of everyone else and download it because they feel like they stumbled across something really valuable, right? And it's about creating that FOMO, especially in London, right? There's stuff going on every week, and it's all about the main reason, like the tagline for Buzz in my head is, you don't want to see events on people's stories the next day that after it happened, right? You want to be there. You want to be taking the videos. You want to be like experiencing that special moment in London, right? And like, especially on TikTok, for example, another thing, right? There's a video. There was a video that was posted about an event that happened. It was like this huge pop up. It looked amazing, right? And one of the comments was like, "Oh, how do you find events like this?" So I just replied immediately, "Oh, there's an app called Buzz. I like selfishly self-promoted, but I replied to that comment putting there's an app called Buzz and it centralizes all these sort of events." And that comment itself, right, even though it was on a completely different post, that drove like 500 downloads because people were interested in it and they thought that it was just they didn't realize that I founded it, obviously. But again, that doesn't really matter because what I was saying was true, and essentially it just allows people to capitalize on people's FOMO, and it allows them to get access to events that they otherwise might not have, right? So I was at an event a few weeks ago and this 17-year-old kid was like, "Oh, I got access to an event through Buzz. I went to it and I met Clint, the founder of this brand called Cortez in London. It's a huge brand, right? They've collaborated with Supreme, Nike, like huge collaborations.
Yeah.
And this stylist, he wants to be a stylist. He's clearly driven, right? And he met Clint as a result of going to these events through Buzz. And it really reminded me of me, right? Like, because literally last year we spoke about the guerrilla marketing. I got Clint, the same guy, to take a photo with this sticker, and that was amazing marketing for me. And in terms of letting other people do the same sort of thing that I was doing at their age, it's just like such a good feeling, and it allows people to not only enjoy these events for fun, but also network, which is something that is like an additional value add, if that makes sense.
So in terms of content, there's usually two buckets, right? There's this what's known as evergreen content. So that could be something like a film, arguably a lot like many of the podcasts that I post. There are stuff that, how to build a table. These are things from IKEA. These are things that you could watch today, in 5 years, 10 years, and they're still relevant, and the insights that you get from them are particularly interesting. But this idea of expiring content, that's something like a Premier League football game, so that unless you watch it tonight, you don't know that Liverpool is going to beat Burnley or whatever. Or with your event, as you said, the event is like, it's happening tonight, and if you miss it, you've missed it, right? So you kind of have this inbuilt, incredible thing of expiring content, because when you're a viewer, right, one of my professors at Duke told me this, that basically if you have two pieces of content, an expiring piece of content, like an event tonight or a football game tonight, versus how to build a table, 90% of the time the person is going to choose the expiring content, right? So you've already kind of found that product market fit in terms of both producing content and your app, in that there's constant expiring content to be able to fill in that gap. But
Absolutely.
selfishly, right, a lot of my stuff is more evergreen content. Do you think there is a way to appeal to cultural phenomenons and what is going on with expiring content in the news, in the marketplace, in nightlife, and other things, Or do you think that people have to change their content to make it expiring? Like, what's the way to appeal to cultural trends and what's going on and make content that appeals to what's going on in the world without your product itself actually appealing to what's going on today, tomorrow, tonight, etc.?
Yeah, I think like something that I saw recently, there's a content creator called Oren John, right? And he calls himself the internet's creative director. He's amazing. You should definitely check him out because he talks about social media strategy and brand strategy. He's really, really great. And he talked about recently how content now, there's no time limit on content, right? So content posted in 2012 could now be getting loads of views, right? For example, Drake, he released a song called Nine in 2016 and it had its biggest streaming day ever in 2025, right? So that's 9 years after, and that's all because of social media. So it just shows that, for example, when you're producing these videos, right? Let's assume that I go on and get 100 million followers on Instagram, right? Like best case scenario, that's where it goes on. A lot of people will then come back to these videos that you've produced with me to find out what my state of mind was, what my vision was right now to get to that place. So I think with you, what I would continue doing is producing content with people that you think have real potential or have already done really great things, because then you can capitalize on their growth. You're basically investing in stocks, right? You're picking interesting people that you want to speak to. You're not only gaining value from the conversations you're having, but you're also giving other people value. And in terms of the expiring content thing, I think it works if you want to get like a lot of views in a short amount of time. But then again, you also have to prioritize that content that doesn't necessarily expire, right? Because if people keep seeing your content and they've missed the event, right? Or they didn't get the RSVP or something like that, they might feel like, oh, like that sucks, right? Like they might just like skip it or whatever. But you need to make sure that you are also posting content that reminds people that buzz is still there, for example. You can still access these future events, even if you missed out that past event. And also, it's a great way to convert people who aren't following you into people that do want to follow you. So for example, if someone comments on I posted like, again, like let's say Skepta, I posted a video about a Skepta event, and then people are commenting, oh, like, why have I only just seen this, right? It's 2 weeks after it happened. And then I'll just reply something like, oh, well, drop me a follow and I promise that you won't miss the next one, right? So it's just about making sure that if you do have content that expires, it's still going to keep growing. And the message, even if they missed that initial event, the message of, okay, if you want to go to these types of events, you can still access buzz and you can go to those events in the future.
What do you think? What do you think for, again, another selfish question, but for personal growth, right? That doesn't appeal to an event this week or last week. You know, it's more focused on like the ideas of philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, to researchers at Harvard, to even people like yourself who are doing extraordinary things, so that when you reach 100 million followers, that someone will come back to this episode in September 2025 and learn from. What is the expiring content, or today, you know, what's the date? 16th of September 2025. What is the thing today that appeals to cultural trends for personal development that would make people feel like, oh, okay, I have to listen to this podcast today. I have to read this book today. I have to learn from this person today, rather than tying into something like nightlife?
Yeah, I think it's like I honestly think that creating short form we spoke about this as well. I think short form is just the single best way to get people to listen to your podcast, right? The reason I listen to most podcasts is because I've seen them being promoted on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube as short form content, and those nuggets, right? Those nuggets of value. So for example, out of this conversation, you might clip something from this conversation that I'm talking about social media hacks, right? And that's something that there's no expiry date on that. That's literally something that people can take on board straight away. And if they're interested in that, they might then go and listen to this content. So I think it's more about it's not about creating content that necessarily like is tied in with the current like day to day, right? So maybe we're not talking about political affairs right now. We're not talking about stuff that's going on right now, but we're still talking about value that people can learn from. And I think it's about promoting that value within the long form content, because a lot of people wouldn't realize what we're talking about unless they see that clip and come from it. So it's just about framing. Like I also think, like I always say this to people, one of the best ways to create content about a brand or about your personal brand is long form, right? And you can kind of just clip up content and post it on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Another method as well, Harvey, I'm going to recommend to you. Have you heard about trial reels?
I have. Haven't
Yeah?
used them.
Do you use it?
I've heard of them. No.
There you go. You need to use these things, right? I'm telling you right now that trial reels is one of the greatest marketing inventions that has come out of the last year, right? Like, it's essentially, for those that don't know, it's on Instagram, and I used to be like a huge advocate for TikTok, right? And not really Instagram short form, but it's essentially trial reels essentially allows you to post a video on Instagram, click a little button called trial reels, and it allows you to post that content to people that don't follow you, right? So it doesn't show to any of your usual followers. It only shows to people who might be interested in your content. And that's just like unlimited potential followers, right? You can also post the same video over and over again with different hooks, different music. You can beta test, and you can really work out what works for you in a way that doesn't flood your followers' feed with content, right? Like, if you were to post the same video 5 times on your main Instagram, people would unfollow you immediately, right? Like, it would just be an immediate unfollow. But trial reels allows you to test content to people that don't follow you and just work out what works and what doesn't. And I also encourage people to do this on TikTok, because TikTok and Instagram work in very different ways. On TikTok, when you post a video, it doesn't necessarily show to all of your followers. It just shows to a fraction of your followers and then get pushed out to the For You page, right? So it gets suggested to people that might be interested in your content. And on Instagram, when you post on your main feed, it gets shown to most of your followers, and just that, right? So it doesn't get pushed out even further. But trial reels has basically stopped that, and it allows you to reach a new audience that you might not have tapped into otherwise. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough.
I think the reason I've been less, and we were chatting about this before, I've been less interested in the idea of reels, right? So at the moment, I've massively increased my level of production to the point of I'm putting out 5 podcasts a week. You know, I've got to make a thumbnail, title, description, LinkedIn post, newsletter, etc. And so it's from like a time efficiency standpoint, in that a clip, for example, could do very well, but getting the right hook, the right messaging, and tying into another question I was going to ask, sometimes I use like filler words, for example, you know, words that aren't interesting and get people to drop off the clip. And looking at my actual YouTube statistics, having, you know, got 100,000 or 200,000 views on TikTok versus 100,000 on LinkedIn, 10x the number of people are coming from LinkedIn to TikTok. So I think that's been my biggest barrier to entry, is terms of like the actual time that I have in a day to make clips of the podcast. Yes, if I had people working for me, it would make a lot of sense to clip it up and post it, and maybe one would do well. But just in terms of time efficiency, I don't have enough hours in the day to actually clip everything up. And so that's why it's been hard. But I can definitely see something which I thought would be very good, which I haven't utilized, is more, as you were talking about, speaking face to the camera. And if you can, there's people, many people in like VC, for example, that will say, here are the deals this week. It'll be their face, their pop-up images, and that will get between 50 to 100,000 views. And a lot of them, as Brian Chesky would say, would be more of your core audience. And so despite getting a relatively smaller number of views, the output level would be a lot higher. So in terms of going back to that point, in terms of posting your face and your messaging, so you have a big event that's coming up this week for Skepta or whoever it is, that can tie into your app on the end, and you have a hook for it. How do you make sure to not use filler words or to say stuff in the most concise, impactful way possible? Do you edit on like CapCut? Do you just speak from the heart and put images up on the screen? What's the repeatable way to actually go about achieving that?
I'm about to give you the blueprint, Harvey, so take notes, right? You can clip this up. Right, so when you're producing content, right, I usually I film everything, right? So I'll just film, I'll keep speaking, and the way that I'll do it is that I'll say like everything that I want to say in different clips, right? And then I'll just chop it up. So I will make sure that there is literally no slack between any of the words that I'm saying. I just make sure that it's pure value, right? So I will cut all the I'll cut all the pauses. I will also put my speed up to 1.1 on CapCut, right? So that's another thing that a lot of people do that not many people realize people do, because it's so subtle. And it makes your like tone of voice and your cadence way quicker, and it makes it way more interesting for people, right? So that's something that I would totally recommend. So you increase it up to 1.1 speed on CapCut. And then there's also the sounds, right? So there's sounds within. You can obviously, I swear by CapCut, right? So for those that don't know, CapCut is an amazing editing platform. It's free to use, right? You can upgrade, but you can use the free version pretty easily. And and basically I use sounds and pop-ups on the screen as well. So essentially TikTok is a game of attention and retention, right? So you need to keep people's attention for as long as possible. And the way you do that is by having a great hook, and then also having different things throughout the video that means that they keep watching. So for example, if I'm posting a video about Skepta, I'll have that text at the front, right? And then I'll post videos or photos that pop up on the screen so people have something to look at whilst I'm speaking. Like at the very base level of it, you know those videos where on TikTok you see a podcast clip and then there's Subway Surfers or Minecraft below it, right? Like it seems so basic, but that means that you watch the whole video because you're listening, but you're watching something else, right? And like, I don't know why it works so well, but it does. So I basically took that philosophy and applied it to my own videos and made sure that things are popping up with sounds, right? So I'll have a little camera shutter pop up at the same time. I'll have a little ping or something like that. These different sounds, like someone that I know that is, I think, one of the best editors that I know is called Leo Olsen. I'm sure you've seen his content on TikTok or
he's
Instagram,
from
right?
Jersey.
He's amazing.
He's from Jersey.
He is. Yeah. Do you know him well or no?
I don't know him.
Okay, I'll introduce you because he's one of the most talented guys in terms of editing. And what I learned from him is these sounds and these pop-ups and these cuts is so important. Just keep that visual attention. If you have a clip where it's just us talking for like a minute with nothing going on, with no subtitles, with no captions, the retention is going to be slow, right? Like it's going to be terrible. But if you add these little bits on top of it, the retention, like I always see it as like you need to build up to the maximum potential of your video, right? So you have the basic video, and then adding a hook kind of gets you that extra 5%. Adding those sounds gets you an extra 5%. Adding those pop-ups gets another 5%, right? And it's just about trying to get to that 100% of, okay, this video is good to go, right? And once you've got that video good to go, then it's about platform leveraging. So on TikTok, for example, I'll take my finished polished video on CapCut. I'll leave the text out on CapCut. I won't put that on in that version. I'll just put it on TikTok. So you put your sort of title and you use so there's a few different things, right? There's the title, which is super important, and that's the thing that pops up first. And that tells people what the video is going to be about and what you're talking about. Next, you have your hashtags, right? And the hashtags are super, super important. You need to use hashtags that are relevant to the content that you're speaking about, but also have quite a lot of videos attached to them, right? So you don't want to use a like a hashtag like hashtag business and venture capital podcast, right? Like that's too niche. You should be going like hashtag business podcast or hashtag business and capturing this sort of like high level funnel so that you know the people that you're showing that content to are going to be like vaguely interested, because like hashtags are so important in the distribution of TikTok. Another thing that I talked about recently, which is a hack that not many people know about, is putting text on the screen, right? Using all the keywords that are relevant to your video and hiding that text, right? And by doing that, you are directly informing the TikTok algorithm about what your video is about, right? Because you have to remember, at the end of the day, their job is to take your video and push it to the people that are interested in your video. And the way that they're going to do that is with the most information possible. So by giving them information about what your video is about, you're increasing the chances that it gets shown to a good audience and it gets better engagement, right? So that's hashtags, title, and also hidden words. Sound is also really important, right? People just think that you could go on trending sounds and just add the top trending sound and it'll do well, right? That's not the case. Sounds basically have subcultures on TikTok. And this is like, I've never heard anyone talk about this, but for example, if I'm posting a video about UK underground rap or something like that, I won't use a trending sound. I'll use a song that's kind of trending in the UK rap scene. And that basically capitalizes on people who have been watching other videos with that sound, right? So it's the same principle as hashtags.
How will you find that video?
So essentially, I will, as I'm scrolling through, obviously the videos that I'm scrolling through on my For You page, they're pretty relevant to what sort of things that I'm making videos about. So it would be like UK rap or fashion or whatever. And I can then notice that these sounds are being like used repeatedly, and I can think, okay, well, this sound must be trending because it's being used a lot at the moment. So I'm going to use it for something similar, right? So I'm going to use it for a video that's similar to all this stuff. And like, it's such a hack in terms of people think it's all about hashtags, but it's also about sound, because when you like a video with a certain sound, TikTok will assume that you're interested in the video and the content, but also that you're interested in the sound, right? Like you might like the sound or you might like the song. And yeah, it's super important, right? Like it's just about using sounds that align with your content and aren't necessarily just trending on the hot 100 or whatever.
Well, something else that I find quite hard, right? So that if, let's say you're walking through the street type of content, I have a few questions on that. One is on lighting, one is walking through the street, and the third one is repetition. The first one with lighting, like, does it have to be the perfect time of day? Like, are there only certain times to go out? The second one is when you walk through the street, is it always the same street or you always try and go somewhere new? And the third one is repetitive content, right? Because if you work out walking through the street is the best thing to do, should you just do that? Does that bore viewers? Do you need a carousel and stuff like that? So that was lighting, walking through the street, and changing up your content.
Yeah, so in terms of lighting, it's just I go during the day, right? So I don't use any special lighting. I just make sure that there is enough natural light, right? Like a video in the middle of the night wouldn't do that well.
You don't get embarrassed walking through the street with a phone?
I did, right? Like I really did. But then I realized once you walk past someone who's watching you film yourself and speaking, like I speak pretty loudly, right? Like it's like I'm on an obnoxious FaceTime. But once they walk past you, they might think, oh, like, look at this guy, right? But literally 1 minute after, they will literally never think about you again, right? So that's how I kind of like reassure myself. And I think, okay, well, as long as I get this video out, I could get 100,000 views and I could get enough downloads where that slight embarrassment is worth it. Next thing about location, right? Where I'm walking, I usually do it like I live in Southwest London, right? So I usually do it around the area that I live. And I think it doesn't really matter where you are as long as it's quiet enough that people can hear you, right? Like if there's loads of background noise, that doesn't work. So you need to make sure that it's quiet, and that you can speak sort of with full confidence without thinking, oh, there's loads of people around, right? That's another thing. And then in terms of switching up the content, the two bits of content that I do is one, I'll do those videos, and then two, I will do carousels as well to tailor to two types of audience, because there's people who will watch mostly carousels on TikTok and just scroll through and like they like to read things themselves and at their own pace, right? And then there's other like type B people who like watching content and kind of like watching along and being entertained by it. So I make sure that when I'm producing a video about an event or something, I'll also make a carousel about that same event so that I'm kind of hitting both nails on the head. Another thing that I do, right? This is something I recommend to everyone. I always wear a hat and my glasses, right? Like I literally every single video I wear the same hat or like similar hats and a pair of sunglasses. And that means that I now have gone from someone who's not really recognizable to whenever they see that hat and whenever they see that sunglasses, they know that they're about to find out about an event, right? And that's the sort of thing that I've been trying to curate, where now I have repeat people commenting on my videos being like, oh, like, I know that like when I see these videos, I know I'm about to get some good value, right? Like it's just about kind of creating this almost sitcom feeling. Like, you know how people love sitcoms so much, right? That's because they're familiar. When you're watching Friends, right, the TV show, or The Office, those are the two most famous ones, right? They are set around the same location with the same characters and they become familiar. And it's the same on social media, right? Like if you can create this sense of familiarity where people know you and they know what they're going to get, that becomes something where if they see that every day, they're not going to get bored of that because they know that your content and even though visually it might be the same, the content of what you're actually saying will be different and they're about to find out some value, right? So it's just about building up that trust where you're only posting about good things and providing good value. And then eventually, if you keep doing that over a while, it will just accumulate, right? Your editing will get better, your following will get bigger. And instantly, like, you will just like start growing and growing and growing. Like when I started making these videos, they were just a level below. And as a result of producing like 100 of them, they've all increased in views.
What does your amount of time look like from the idea? So let's say you're walking a similar route, even if it's like a park or something, maybe you walk a slightly different bit, but you have a text-based hook on the screen. You've got your script or what you want to talk about. And you said you might talk for 5 to 10 minutes or whatever it is, and then cut that down, to going about and putting that into CapCut, editing that up, putting that back onto TikTok, putting in the heading text, adding photos and images. How many videos do you aim to put out in a week, and how long does an individual video take, and how do you get more efficient at it over time?
Yeah, so obviously the efficiency comes with practice, right? So like when you understand exactly what you're doing, it just becomes kind of second nature, right? In terms of how long it takes me from start to video to like post it on TikTok, I'd say about 20 minutes max, right? So it's really quick turnaround.
Even
Yeah.
with all
So
the
it's,
images and stuff, how do you do
yeah.
that so quickly?
So essentially, before I shoot these videos, I'll have obviously I study the event, right? So I need to make sure that in my head I know all the details, right? So I need to make sure that everything I'm saying is correct and legitimate. That's the first thing. Then I'll upload the event on Buzz. I'll take a screenshot of the event on Buzz. That's the first thing that comes up, so people can see that it is on Buzz. Then I'll go on the Instagram, I'll take some screenshots, I'll maybe screen record a few things, and then there's a feature on CapCut called overlay, right? And the overlay feature allows you to bring those photos and videos onto the screen in front of the video that you've already filmed. So by then, like if I've got that, like maybe let's say 5 bits of external content, whether that's videos or photos, I can then just click add overlay. It goes straight on the screen. I change the size and that's it, right? And then I add the sound along with that. So when I have a photo pop up, I'll have a little click, right? Or a little ping. And that basically means that that's just more engaging, right? If you have a photo show up with no sound, it's less engaging than with a sound. So the main bits of it is just speeding the whole video up, right? It's to 1.1 speed, cutting it up so there's no slack, and then adding these overlays. And that's it really. Like that's literally it. And then once I get that done, I post it onto TikTok.
And do you put that directly in front of your face or to the side?
It ideally above, right? So like ideally above, but if it's like a big screen thing, you kind of have to just accept that it's going to cover your face.
So do you
And
try
like,
and put
yeah, I
your
don't really
face
mind.
in the do you try and put your face in the lower third and captions as well? Like, do you have a specific layout of a video? Like, if you're filming, do you want your face in the middle? Do you want it near the bottom? And would you put captions like just above the bottom so it wouldn't get in the way of like the profile icon or description or anything?
That's a good question. I've actually never thought about that, but I usually have my face like centered or lower third, right? Like it's usually just between those two so that I know that there's enough space at the top. And actually something that I have experimented with is like actually having subtitle captions, right? But I've actually stopped doing that recently because I find that with the pop-ups and the text and like all of that, it becomes very busy, right? So I think that if people are going to be watching a video, they're likely to watch it with the sound up, so they're going to be listening anyway. And the only thing that usually I recommend putting captions on is because it allows TikTok to kind of see the text that you're like talking about, right? So that is essentially, as I said before, it allows the algorithm to push the video to people who might be interested in what you're talking about. But TikTok does that anyway, right? So TikTok listens to what you're saying and it kind of has a transcript anyway, and it pushes it out to people anyway, right? So you don't need to show that text. If you want to, if you're not doing the pop-ups, I would suggest having captions, right? Like it's either, for me, it's one or the other because you don't want to overcrowd it. Because obviously you've only got a certain amount of space on your screen, you don't want to like pack it out. And I think keeping it simple is usually better. But yeah,
I feel, I feel like there's a degree to which this element gets taken away because the inbuilt element to your video is that you were wearing sunglasses and wearing a hat, which means
yeah,
that you have to show your emotion less because it's kind of hidden behind your eyes. But
yeah,
something that I found difficult when posting on social media is, let's say we were meeting face to face in person, right? There's a certain, even on a video podcast, right? There's a certain amount of micro expressions in someone's face when you connect with someone. You can tell if they're genuinely happy to be there, how they react.
yeah,
You might change what you say according to how they react, right? But when you're on a TikTok, you're just like saying stuff to a camera. There's no reaction, there's no micro expressions, there's no, are they interested, are they bored to what they're saying? And there's also from yourself, right? You're not acting in a way to which another person's going to respond. I've often been told that you have to add like an extra level of emotion on camera for
absolutely.
people to
Yeah.
see the normal amount of emotion that you see in real life. What sort of strategies or ways do you go about being on camera to be charismatic, to be worth listening to add in
Mm,
emotion, to evoke feeling and actually get people to listen to what you say and download
yeah.
your app?
It is like it is weird, right? Like it's a strange concept speaking to a camera and not having anyone around you, right? Like the way I usually think about it is I imagine that I'm on a FaceTime call, right? Like it's just about one, you have to imagine you're a FaceTime call speaking to someone directly, and then second, you have to add the extra 10% of emotion or charisma, right? Like you have to play up to that. Okay, like this event, if you could say, oh yeah, this event's gonna be quite cool, I might go, like, but if you're speaking like, oh, this event is going to be absolutely stand out, you change
Yeah.
your cadence, you change your speed, right? That's also super important. If I keep speaking like this, you can see that I'm very excited about it. But if I slow it down and I say, listen, like this is going to be the best event of the week, people then kind of engage with that more, right? So I think it's really important to change your cadence, change your tone, and just speak to your camera as if you would your best friend, right? Like, and just adding in those little quips that make you you, and like showing that side of your personality that a lot of people kind of freeze up when they're on camera. But it takes practice, right? Like, it really takes practice. And I think that vlogging, for example, I've done vlogs in Paris for Fashion Week. That's made me a lot more comfortable on camera. So it's about getting more comfortable on camera and allowing your true personality to come out plus 10%, right? You need to add that extra charisma, because people won't listen to you or watch you ever if you don't have that like happy feeling, right? Like, if you don't watch people who are just a bit miserable on TikTok, you want to watch people who are kind of happy, regardless of whether they actually are. So sometimes I have days where I don't want to record a video, right? I absolutely don't. I might feel shit or like whatever, right? I might not feel great. But it's just about, at the end of the day, I'm thinking, if I make a video and it gets 100,000 views, that's more downloads, that's more money. Like that's in my head. That's like every day. And like, regardless of where I am, if I see a video, if I see an event being posted, I will then make an active effort to get that video up within the next hour, right? Like, it's about time and speed. And I think people lack that urgency of, oh, I'll just post a video next week, right? But events has made me, like the expiry that we spoke about, that's made me a lot more committed to actually filming the videos and uploading it, because I know that if I don't, someone else will, or like I'll lose out on the opportunity, right? Like, every event that's good is an opportunity for me to get downloads for Buzz. So I would be selfish to myself to miss out on that. But yeah.
I'll ask you five final short answer questions. The first of which being, it isn't really a short answer question, but like I'm conscious of time. But it's sort of like two questions in one. Is sort of, how do you go about building Buzz into the brand you want it to be? What does success look like for it? And how do you go about monetizing it?
Yeah, so in terms of building Buzz as a brand, I think I pulled a lot of inspiration from sort of the brands that I looked up to when I was a bit younger, right? So obviously, like Cortez, I've mentioned that before, their style of marketing and sort of Clint, the founder, his approach to Cortez really inspired me in terms of, you need really clear eye grabbing visuals, right? So you need to make something that like people can instantly recognize, right? So that's why the smiley face came around, right? Like, the smiley face, people love that little logo, and it makes them like kind of instantly think of Buzz. So that's one thing that I was like, okay, that's really critical to Buzz, and I want to make sure that's existing throughout. The second bit was to kind of make Buzz aligned with London culture, right? So for example, when you download the Buzz app, you see this short little video that I made of all these photos that I've taken in the past, right? So I obviously do photography for people that don't know, and I've taken photos of artists like Skepta, ASAP Rocky, and like loads of these different London artists. And that little magic moment at the start of the app, like loading screen, kind of gives people a taste of what it actually is. And I wanted to make people feel like they were joining a club rather than downloading an app, right? Because when you download apps nowadays, it's kind of boring, right? Like, you just enter your email, enter your password, and then you get the magic moment, right? Which is like accessing it. But I wanted to give people that magic moment before. And again, like, also, I produced a video campaign recently for Buzz, which was this story of this guy from London. He was on the phone to his friends telling him about this amazing party that he went to last night, right? And he was saying, oh, you missed out on this party. It was amazing. Like, Louis Theroux was like gun leaning in the corner, like, and I basically made these really niche references to London culture that I knew would do well. And like, for those that are interested, you can go watch on my Instagram or Buzz Instagram. But essentially, that sort of content where I knew that I needed to keep Buzz as like a brand in terms of a streetwear brand, like that sort of like cultural brand, rather than just a tech platform. Because when you look at like the incumbents like Dice, RA, Fat Soma, they don't really have a brand or a culture for me, right? Like, for other people as well, they just use those platforms as a tool, and they don't feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And like, for example, I got a message from someone who works at UGG this morning, right? The brand UGG. She's like head of their social media. She texted me saying last night she was at dinner with someone that doesn't know me, and she was showing the UGG girl my app, right? She was like, oh, I found this app on TikTok. It's amazing. And then this girl was like, oh, I know the founder, right? But that is a sort of thing where you want to make people want to speak about your app, right? And the way you do that is by building this visual culture and this sort of greater culture that means that people want to actually share it, rather than like a Dice or an RA, which you're like, oh, yeah, you have to get the tickets through that platform. You don't really care about it. And I think that's our secret sauce.
do you take a percent of the amount from the event then? Is that how you monetize?
Right. So yeah, in terms of revenue generation, there's two ways, right? So there's event placements, right? So that's people that want to place their event on the app, and we'll take a fee per day, right? And then the second part is ad campaigns, right? So there's integrated tiles within the app. So every four events you scroll through, and it's just a tile that is hyperlinked to their website or their landing page or wherever, right? And I'm only ever going to work with brands. I've said this now, I'll stick to it. I will never work with a brand that doesn't align with Buzz's sort of brand, and also a brand that I don't like, right? So I'll never just take the money and put a brand on there that I don't like. I'd rather wait for the right brands to come, because I know they'll come, right? I absolutely know they'll come. And just go with those brands that sort of, when you're scrolling through these events, those brands don't feel out of place, like a Burberry, for example, or an Adidas or a Nike, or those brands that are truly ingrained in London culture. I want to keep that going across the whole platform. And then also in terms of monetization, there's going to be like obviously the advertising. Then I can break that down into, for example, I'll be able to show different ads to different people on the app. So like 18-year-olds to 25-year-olds, I could show a different ad to 25 to 30-year-olds. And that's going to become really valuable in the future as well.
No promises, and I also don't know them that well. But I know someone very high up at Burberry, so I can send them a message.
That would be great. Honestly, that would be amazing. But yeah, I'm not expecting anything, don't worry. But yeah, that would be amazing if you can make that connection.
And my fourth final question I wanted to ask is there a question that I haven't asked you on this podcast, or that you're not asked enough, that you'd like to talk more about?
Honestly, like the main thing that I'm pretty sure I spoke about it last year, but I want to double down on it, is just if anyone who's listening to this and you've watched the whole thing, which is I'm really grateful for, and Harvey is as well, if you have any sort of idea that you haven't started yet, or you think there's something stopping you, or you think money's stopping you or time stopping you, just build the most simple version of that possible, right? Whether it's a little tally form like I spoke about earlier, whether it's a little web form, or it's an Instagram account, or I don't know, it's one project that you want to like put together, like make the first step, because I promise you that's the hardest bit, to like kind of take that first bit of action. Once you take that first action, you'll realize that it's really not as hard as you thought. It's just about that fundamental in your head, oh, I don't want to take that first step. But I promise you, if you don't, you will regret it in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. So I can really, like, all I can say to you guys is basically just start working on that project right now, because the law of accumulation is very real, as Harvey knows, as I know. And it's basically just, it's so valuable in terms of the growth that you can get through experience and network, and like even social media. If you start posting on social media, you never know who can see your content. And I think that's one of the most overlooked things nowadays in young people. And it's just about whatever you want to build, just start building the smallest version possible, because yeah, you'll thank yourself in the future.
3 final questions. I'm not sure if I had these, but I kind of have ended up asking them to all of my last 50 guests, and I think you were like my 12th episode or something like that, so it was quite early on. But one of these is, if I was to ask someone in 100 years' time, how would you want to be described, and what would you want your legacy to be?
Great question. I'd want to be remembered as someone who made a real impact on the cultural scene and the tech scene, right? The intersection between both of those things. Someone who's helped a lot of people get into the industry, that's seen as somewhere where it's not associated with a lot of positivity a lot of the time, right? There's a lot of problems in fashion. There's a lot of problems in music. There's all these relationships that people kind of perceive as negative, right? And I think helping people get into that industry and helping people have that mindset of, okay, I need to start building projects together and building these communities, I think that's super important, and that's something I want to be remembered for. Obviously, I want Buzz to be as big as it possibly can be. I want it to be live in New York, LA, London, all over the world. And yeah, I want to keep working with brands and taking photos. And yeah, I think expressing myself visually is super important as well. So I think just someone who's a leader within the tech and culture space, who's helped a lot of people out.
My penultimate question, and you can look at any scope of time that you like, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, etc. What's next for you?
Well, that's a good question. I think next step is going to be launching Buzz in a new city, right? So that's going to be a challenge that I've never experienced before. Obviously, in the first version, we kind of launched in Milan, but that was basically just because we had an event there. It wasn't proper, right? So essentially that's going to look like me finding someone to replace me in London, right? So someone's going to have to do what I'm currently doing in London, and then looking to different cities. I don't know which one it's going to be yet. I'm not going to say it yet because I don't want to upset anyone, but that's going to be
No
really
exclusive on Personable. No exclusive on Personable for the.
I'm thinking maybe New York. I'll give you New York.
There we are.
I think yeah, that's a world exclusive. But yeah, I think in terms of next steps, that's the next step. And then also I want to work with a lot more brands, right? So for example, I'm shooting Skept is he's hosting a fashion show on Saturday, and I'm shooting it for Polaroid. That's also exclusive, and that will be going live next week. So I'm going to be taking photos of people. And yeah, like that's the first campaign that they've done of that kind. So like I'm under a lot of pressure to kind of nail it, but I think I will. I'm confident that we'll do well. But yeah, working with more brands, keeping the mentorship going, running more in-person events, hopefully getting to 50 cohorts soon, right? That would be amazing. Because also something that I didn't mention with the cohorts is that I've also built a back end where everyone can connect with each other, right? From cohort 27 to cohort 1, they can go and upload their own details, where they're based, what they do, what they're interested in, what they want to learn, right? And then they can go back and pick out, okay, from cohort 1 or cohort 2, someone can connect with cohort 15, and then they can start working together. And that has happened like a lot now. So people are like creating photo shoots together, people are landing amazing jobs, and like they always texting me about it. And I think building that up to a stage where maybe we have like 50 to 100 people, 100 cohorts would just be like such a special thing. And then I could also bring in brands on that side, right? So for example, Canva or Adobe, if they want to get involved with that, I'd love to host events with them or have a sponsorship structure and yeah, keep growing that out. But yeah.
It's nice that you're following me from London to New York. I'm sure whatever city I get next is going to be the next launch space for Buzz.
Absolutely. Wherever you are, I'll be.
And my final question, and I asked this to every guest on Personable. I'm not sure if this was a signature question when we spoke, but probably done it for 70 plus episodes now, is what is one thing that you would want a listener to take away from this episode?
I kind of jumped the gun earlier with that profound answer, but I think, okay, I'll give a different one. It's just about, I'll go social media based, right? I think it's really important to remember that if you want to post on social media, right, which I personally think is one of the best like value tools in the world, full stop, right now in terms of marketing yourself or your product or your service. If you're worried about what other people think, please don't be worried, right? Like the worst thing that can happen is that someone that you don't like maybe sees the video and they're like, oh, like look at this guy creating content. But at the end of the day, if your content aligns with your vision and what you want to become, right, and you just need to be sharing value for other people and helping other people out, and also promoting your own stuff. You just need to stay at it and ignore the people that might stop you from doing that. Because at the end of the day, when in 100 years, when everyone here is dead, right, like everyone's gonna be, I know that's a morbid way to end this, but when everyone's dead, no one's gonna remember the TikToks that you posted necessarily, right? So it's just about, if you have any interest in posting TikToks or posting on social media and growing out a business, do it now, right? I promise you, just post that first bit of content. And don't worry about what other people think of you, because I promise you, like, those people are the ones that you want to ignore, and those are the people that aren't building something for themselves, and they will always just be full of hatred for you. But it doesn't matter, because as long as you're working towards your goal and your final vision, you should just ignore everyone else. That might be a cheesy one, but you can have that one.
I was listening to the All In podcast, and that's basically 4 venture capitalists based in the US, and they talk about like real-time market news. You know, Personable markets is some kind of something similar to that. I'm more focusing on the stock market. They're more focused on like VC investments. But one of the guests that they had recently at the All In Summit, or maybe an in-person All In podcast event earlier this year, was Chris Williamson. And he's definitely a kind of idol or person that I look up to in the podcasting space. He's got about 3 million subscribers, very focused on like philosophy, does 3 podcasts a week, was originally on Love Island, kind of had an existential crisis, turned to podcasting to learn from the best, right? And I think his name is David Friedberg, asked him a question, right? And he was talking about the essentials for a scalable business. And he was saying that one of the essentials to a scalable business is that when the business starts to scale, that you're no longer needed as the core piece. And they spoke about this with Mr. Beast, and you know how he can go about scaling whilst also keeping himself at the center, but you know, expanding businesses. And so he asked the same question to Chris Williamson, and he said to Chris, right, like, you've developed this incredible brand, you're earning a lot of money. What next, right? If you want to make a successful business, surely you need to hire someone else to take your spot. And to which Chris replied, I've already found success. I do what I love. I'm posting podcasts. And the reason I started this podcast is not to make $1 billion. I'm sure Chris is making millions, if not tens of millions at the moment. But his answer was, I interview people because that is what I love doing. And I would take that exact piece of that exact statement, and I would say that this is a podcast that makes me love podcasting. I think you are absolutely incredible. I think the first podcast that we had on, you delivered so much knowledge. I told you this before the podcast, and now I'll say it on record. My dad has probably quoted your first podcast about 1 million times. And I think you were probably only, maybe my age now, 21, 22 years old. And what I think, and you hit the nail right on the head in one of the first things you said on this podcast, is you said, Harvey, if I was to get, or when I get to 100 million followers, someone will come back and they'll listen to this podcast, Personable, me 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and they'll go, what was James Frost like? And I think that hits the nail on the head, right? I'm trying to interview people that are the best of their field and people that are becoming. And I think you've gone from someone that was going to become one of the world's best to someone that is the world's best, having reached 18th on the lifestyle chart. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm looking forward to having way more conversations as you blow up Buzz, launch it in New York with the exclusive on Personable, and as we both embark on our careers. So thank you so much, James.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.